Hey, y'all. My name is Doug Gore with the Spray Wash Academy, and today we're going to talk with Miss Nicole Royer, and we're going to talk about how much is drone insurance and what is really covered in under that policy. Miss Nicole, tell us a little bit about you and the company that you work for.
Yes, been here at BWI for a few years, and I have just found the niche for drones. They excite me, and I've become the drone insurance specialist here at BWI. So yeah, I'm excited to share my knowledge.
And so it's bwifly.com, correct?
Correct.
So bwifly.com. Okay, now I get it. It's
Yep.
sticking in my brain. All right. So anyhow, again, we're going to talk a little bit about how much is drone insurance and what all is kind of a covered kind of a thing. And I know you've kind of, before we get into some of the questions here, you've put together a couple of just blank scenarios that I want to give kind of a disclaimer here that these are not actual quotes for you. Don't think about these are just scenarios that might help you get an understanding of what a drone policy might cost you. So if you're worried about some other aspects, check the other videos. But Mr. Cole, let's get into a little bit about the ones that you've done and kind of give us the rundown on those, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, this is the biggest question I get every day. I get a call, hey, what would it cost for, coverage for one drone, and it's hard. It's really hard to give you a price. You really need to, these quotes are, yeah, these quotes have a lot of variables, and we need to have a lot of questions answered to be able to give you an accurate price. And they're all very unique and dependent on, what you're doing, what type of equipment you have. I did pull a few quotes just to kind of give an idea of what quotes look like. And this is all based on today's current market. So these can change at any time.
And so this is October 25th of 2023. So I want to be clear on that.
Yeah, correct. So just the bare bones policy is liability only, one drone. And the lowest liability that I have on this is 500,000. And you're looking at one drone, and we're looking at a Mavic 3 Pro. So pretty common drone. It's not a large drone over 55 pounds or anything like that. 500 liability, no insured value on the drone. So you're self-insuring the equipment yourself. It's coming in at $438 for the year. So
that's like super cheap. So that's reasonable. More like a little tiny drone that you're using for, okay.
Yeah, for inspections, roof inspections. A lot of our cleaning contractors here, they have their cleaning drones, but then they have some of these smaller drones to maybe inspect the job site before they actually, to bid the job. Right. So that's just one single drone. If you add a drone to this policy, it's going to increase the premium. So each drone you add, it does increase it. They do build in a multi-drone discount into the price. It's not labeled anywhere, but it is built in there if you do add drones. And then we'll see, we got another quote here. And these are all based on, we're not flying over people. We're following all the FAA rules. We have the Part 107 license and no claims, no incidences or anything like that. So all of these quotes do reflect that. So looking at another small drone, an DJI Air 2S, insured value of $1,200 with the liability at $500,000. So pretty basic policy here. You're looking at $621 for the year. So not crazy, but you'll see how it increases when you add that whole value of the drone. So if your drone, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Oh, so yeah, if your drone, if malfunction, you crashed, it would, you would be covered for replacement up to that $1,200.
Gotcha. And plus the damage to whatever it was that was
plus the liability, yeah.
So in any of those estimates, were you able to look at things that were pressure washing drones, the higher end of stuff?
Yeah, so I do have one right here. I've got a cleaning drone insured value at $28,500. And then we actually added some payload. So we added some cleaning payload, some window cleaning payload that would be attached to the drone. That equipment's an additional $7,500 that we insured. $1 million liability policy on this. And this is one drone, one payload. And you're looking at a quote of $4,497 for the year. So you can see the difference when you get into the more expensive, costly equipment, the bigger drones, it does increase. If I break it down, the drone itself insured at $28,500, your premium's $2,961 on that. Then you have the payload. That's another, that's insured for $7,500. You're looking at $954 premium for that. Then we have our liability at $1 million, and that's $521. So the liability is actually really affordable. And then actually, oh, go ahead.
No, so on that, if I understood that correctly, it's 4,000 and some change for the entire package, okay, for the year on that particular scenario. If I just wanted to just put general liability on there, it was under $1,000.
Yeah.
If I didn't want to insure my equipment and all of that kind of stuff, I wanted to self-insure myself. I'm under $1,000 for the insurance on that particular quote. Oh, that's like,
yeah, you're at $521 for $1 million of liability on this one particular drone.
So I don't ever like to call anybody stupid, but if you didn't get a policy based on those numbers, you'd be stupid, right?
Yeah. And the biggest,
why would you, that's ridiculously cheap. I thought it would be much more expensive. Now, I will also want to give the caveat that you may get a quote for $3,000 just for general liability. Everything is based on the things that she has added into the system, and you have to answer all those questions to end up getting the number. So she's just trying to give you a generalized idea of what it could be. So equipment and everything else, a little over $4,000 under that scenario. Anyhow, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want to make sure.
You're fine. Yeah. And on that point is I do get people that I just want the equipment covered. I don't need the liability. And that makes no sense to me. So you're willing to self-insure liability, which it's not an option. So it can't be done anyways.
Yeah.
But you can have a claim up to $1 million and you're willing to pay out of pocket for that, but you're not willing to pay out of pocket for $28,000 on the equipment. It makes no sense. And the bigger risk is the liability, right? If you cause damage or harm to someone else or someone else's property, there is a chance that a lawsuit could be brought upon you, and you want to make sure that you are protected. And that's what the liability does in this case. If you damage your drone, $28,000, yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow, but that's a lot easier to come back from than $1 million.
Yeah, your drone crashes and it throws one of its a piece off of it. Doesn't even matter what that piece is, but that piece goes flying off and cuts the cheek of a child or does something worse. That lawsuit can be $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. Just because it's a piece of aviation equipment, really, I think.
Exactly.
So, very good. All right. Any other ones that you want to go over?
All right. Let's see. I might have one more here.
Because I kind of cut into you there, and I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. All right. Okay. Here's another one. A liability only. This is 3 drones, 1 cleaning drone, 2 smaller drones that we talked about. Liability at $1 million. No insured value. The insured is taking the risk to replace their own equipment if there's any damage. This quote came in at $1,650. It's covering 3 drones for up to $1 million. So It's not too bad.
Yeah, that's yeah. I again, I don't ever want to call anybody stupid, but people would be stupid not to do that, right? I really thought that it was going to be a lot more expensive. I really did. I mean, so I'm pleasantly surprised, and I think, if people aren't insuring, they're just not being smart. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I mean, and it can go upwards into $10,000 plus if you have 4 cleaning drones, they're worth $40,000 each, and you want to insure the value of all of those, yeah, it's going to increase, but you're also going to be covered in the event something happens, that you can get back up and running your operation very quickly.
Exactly. Good. So what can I do to lower the cost? And for me, I'm kind of looking at it going, there's not that much cost there anyhow, but what can I do to lower those costs? We talked in a previous segment about, doing the deductible. If I lower the deductible, which you can't do that in this industry. So what else can I do to lower the cost of my insurance?
Well, to keep your rate at the best possible rate is to, definitely be proficient with your equipment. Try not to have any claims. That's going to help. And do you want to take the risk as a business owner to self-insure your equipment and do the liability only route? That's a huge cost saver. You can choose to insure all of your equipment, which, that ultimately comes down to what you decide you want to do. Like, do we want to make sure everything is fully insured, that, if anything were to break, if anything was stolen, if anything was damaged, that we're covered for the replacement. And we want to make sure that, our assets are protected and our company's protected with the liability in the event something unfortunate happened. So you can, to save money, if you're looking at just the dollar amount and you want to save money, you can choose to remove the whole coverage on your equipment and go a liability only route. That is the best way to go. You're going to get a very inexpensive price for, depending on what you're needing to do if you go the liability only route. The other thing is, sometimes it's like, hey, I'm worried about the drone. If the drone falls, I want to make sure that's covered. And then I have people who will insure everything. They're going to insure their batteries, their battery chargers, the cords that do that, extra parts, spare parts, all of those, the remote controller, all of that. If you want to insure that, yeah, we can insure that. But if you're wanting to save money, a $200 or $300 battery, can you afford to replace that out of pocket versus filing a claim?
So do you do like
those are ways to save?
So in that questionnaire, that's one of the things that they itemize the parts and that helps get the price?
Correct. Yeah. So, and the best way to get the best price is to itemize everything out that you want insured. So you can lump your whole, say you buy a kit, and that kit's $40,000, and we can you're quoting the drone at $40,000. Well, we're anticipating that drone worth $40,000, and that may include the chargers, the batteries, the remote parts that might not even ever be in the air, and you're going to be paying on a premium of that equipment potentially flying. Where if you schedule everything out and you itemize everything, you're going to get better rates on the ground equipment than if you just lumped it all in as one.
Because it's not in the air.
It's not in the air. So I recommend that, what is the cost to replace your drone today? Don't over-insure the equipment, because they're only going to pay out on what it costs to replace your drone today. So what would it cost me to replace my drone today? If you want to insure your drone, put that amount in there. If you, have a remote controller that's worth $2,000 or $3,000 that you want to insure, put that under ground equipment and put the value on there. If you want to insure the battery charging system, ground equipment, you're going to label it and break everything out, itemize piece by piece. That's going to get you the best rate to cover all your equipment.
Awesome. And so a question that I thought of earlier that I didn't ask, is if they're flying their drone and they happen to hand it to somebody else who's not licensed, and that drone crashes and harms somebody, there's no coverage because the person flying was not licensed. So I wanted to make that clear too. Am I covered no matter where I fly, like military bases, downtown areas, football games, or other countries?
So not all carriers, but the majority of the policies I write is with a carrier who has worldwide coverage. So depending on your needs and risks, would depend on, which carrier is going to be the best fit for you. Majority will cover territory worldwide, but it'll be specified in the policy with your quote if it is covered worldwide or not. As for, can you fly anywhere? No. You can fly wherever, legally you can fly due to the FAA rules and regulations. So if there's airspace restrictions and things like that, you have to follow all the FAA rules and guidelines for any of the policies that we offer. They are commercial policies. So you have to be Part 107 licensed, which you will go through. If you are licensed, you go through training, and you should know where you can and cannot fly. And part of your policy is, as long as you're compliant with all FAA rules and regulations, you're covered under that policy. If you're breaking laws, you're breaking the rules, then there's a good chance that your coverage might be void.
Right. So what about if there's special variations and stuff that I can get? Like, as an example, right now, if I'm a pressure washing drone, I take off, I've got 55 pounds, and I'm going to go higher than that 55-pound rating. So I can get, I'm trying to think of the name of it right now. I'm drawing a blank for whatever reason, but I can get a variance from that. I can get a waiver for that.
A waiver, yeah.
So if I get a waiver, am I still covered because I'm going above that, but I have the proper waiver in place? Am I covered?
Correct. Yeah. And in the process of getting your quote, you want to make sure that you are communicating all of that information over to us, because if you're not, and you're holding stuff back, you may not be covered. Everything on our end, you're covered for what you've told us. But if you're saying, hey, I'm flying a drone over 55 pounds and I don't even have a waiver for a drone over 55 pounds, you're not covered on that policy. So you want to make sure that you're providing all the information, what you're doing, so we can make sure that you, and getting the proper waiver and proper equipment, so we can quote you properly and provide you the proper coverage. If you're saying, oh no, it's not over 55 pounds, it's, under that, and we're like, okay, we're quoting you based on that. That's what you're covered for. In the event of a claim, when an investigation is done and they find that you are over that, you don't have the proper FAA waivers and requirements, your insurance is most likely going to be declined, the claim.
Can I fly at night?
If you have the proper waiver for the twilight, depending on your operation. So in the quoting process and the application process, all of these questions are going to be asked. Again, the more information you can provide us, then we can quote you with the proper coverage. Can we quote that? Yes, absolutely. We can get you coverage, but we need to know that's part of the operation you're going to be doing, and we need to verify that you have the proper waivers in place. So
I had a really good question that popped in my mind, and this happens to me sometimes. It'll come back to me, but all right. So am I covered if I fly 2 drones at once? Like if I'm using one to wash and one to video, because sometimes I can get a drone to sit there and I can push altitude and just make it stay in one spot, then pick up my other drone and fly it up and video that. Would I be covered doing something like that?
So as long as your drones are all listed on the policy. So if you have a washing drone listed, you have, another Mavic 3 listed, and they're all properly listed, and you're following all the guidelines, FAA rules and requirements, you would be covered. It's not uncommon for businesses to have multiple drones, as long as they're listed, and multiple drone pilots. And I get this question all the time. I can only fly one drone at a time. Why do I have to pay extra for 2 or 3 drones? Well, because potentially they can be in the air at the same time, whether you have other drone pilots, flying them or not, or like a car, you can only drive one car at a time, but there is that risk that you're adding and multiplying the more drones you have. So that's why the rate does increase.
So, and again, the drone insurance isn't very expensive at all anyhow. So to me, that's kind of a moot point really, but does age of a drone actually matter?
No, as long as you're, again, in compliance. What we're finding right now, the age of some of the older drones don't have the new, tracking safety procedures that are now required. So you can still fly those if you have those little external, I don't even know, they're like pods or whatever you can attach to your drone to be compliant. So as long as the drone's compliant with the rules and regulations, then it really doesn't matter the age of the drone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and right now what she's talking about is there are things you can put on your drone if your drone is not compliant, because there's a new rule out where your drone has to be able to connect to this thing, and it lets everybody know it's there and that sort of thing. So it's escaping my brain what that is called, but yeah. So you can add these to your drones and then end up being compliant. Mm-hmm. Let's see, will my policy rates go up if I buy a second or third drone? We kind of went over that already. If you already have them, yes, your policy is going to go up a little bit. Can I easily add or take away equipment from my policy? Like for vehicles and all that, or for my general liability policy, sometimes I need to take away a piece of equipment. I bought a second drone. Is it easy to add that? I decided to sell this drone. Is that an easy process to get rid of them?
It is, yeah. So yeah, it's common, you upgrade your equipment and you want to remove some of the older equipment. We can absolutely do that. I always say, give yourself a little notice. Don't wait till the wire. You're doing a job tomorrow, because there is a little bit of a quoting process. Mostly it could be done same day. But if there are some specifics or the equipment's been upgraded and there's some waivers required, then it might take a little bit longer to get that quote over to you. So yeah, it's fairly easy to make changes. The one thing I would say is, what you cannot do is, if you have one drone listed on a policy and you have one and you remove that, add a different drone, and then remove this, you're removing the same equipment over and over. You can't do that, because it's going to show, hey, you have 2 or 3 drones that you're operating. You should have 2 or 3 drones on your policy. So what will happen if you can remove it once or twice at most in the policy term, really once, maybe add it back on once. That's it. Otherwise, you need to add the drones. If you're operating 3, you should really have the 3 covered.
For 3.
Yeah. And the underwriter will get to the point where they could, at renewal, just not offer terms and not renew you. So you don't want to do that, because you can definitely hurt yourself in the long run.
So we talked a little bit about pricing, and we talked about we can do the general liability and we can do the equipment separate from one another. If I insure the hull, the equipment itself, the drone itself, and some of the other parts, it's then covered if it's stolen or ran over, and because that's one of the things. If it's upon landing and somebody pulls up and runs it over, it's covered as long as I have that coverage available.
Correct. Yes, you would have to have the full flight coverage, your liability and the whole value of the equipment. And that covers you, yes, if it's stolen, if it's run over, if it's a flyaway, anything along the lines like that, it'll cover you.
Gotcha. Can I pay by the day? And what I mean by this is, if I only intend to use my drone once or twice a month or once every 6 months, instead of having a year-long policy, can I call up and just get policy for a day or 2 or 3 or for the week, because I only fly temporarily?
That's a great question. There are companies out there who do have I call it the a la carte, pay as you go. We don't offer that. All of our policies are going to be on an annual base. No, if you want to go that route and pay as you go, there are some limitations. So, depending on your equipment, depending on your operation, they might not have an option for that type of coverage. So if you're doing just a small drone creative work, they can probably cover you. But if you're doing large scale commercial cleaning, agricultural type of work, there's a good chance they're not going to offer that as a pay as you go. You would have to do an annual policy.
Gotcha. So if I have the commercial policy and, I've got the big cleaning drone, or I've got the little drone and I'm doing inspections or whatever, and I'm covered for my operations and all that, but then I decide the next day to go out and fly my little at-home thing, and I'm just flying it recreationally, would that transfer over? Would I still be covered on that recreational drone? Or is it something that I have to list, or how does that work?
It would have to be listed, whether it's under a blanket policy or whether it's specifically listed on the policy. That drone would just have to be listed on the policy. But yeah, if you're just out practicing, with your little personal recreational drone, yeah, I mean, you can have that covered on the policy and you'd be covered with that, but you want to make sure that it is listed to have coverage in order to be covered.
Gotcha. So a lot of these pressure washing drones will have a camera on them. They're not actually recording. They're not actually taking pictures, though they could take pictures and or they could take video if you add an attachment to your controller kind of thing. So my question to you on that would be, would I be covered if I'm sued for invasion of privacy, even if I didn't mean to?
So as long as you're following all of the rules, regulations, you're not trespassing, purposely or anything like that, yes, your policy will have in the liability side, and it depends on what amounts you want to put. You can have different amounts. It could be the $1 million, it could be lower, it could be higher. But there is a section in the policy that would cover you for that. If you are going to be uploading images, they're going to want to know, do you have procedures in the application process to, prevent and mitigate, data breaches and risks on publishing images.
And we've touched on this a couple times already, but I'm going to throw it out there. So would I be covered if I were breaking the law, but I didn't know I was breaking the law?
That's a good question. That's a gray area, and it's hard to say yes or no, because it's really going to be dependent on the circumstances of the situation. So if there was a posted sign, you didn't notice it, but it's there, and you weren't paying attention, it depends. It really depends on the situation. That's a hard one to answer. Most likely you would be covered if you're not intentionally, breaking the law or doing something like that. But if it's intentional, or if it's something that you should know, there's a good chance that no, you would not be covered.
Right. They're not going to cover you, that kind of thing. Okay. Ms. Nicole, I really appreciate you joining us for this segment. We got another one to do a little bit later on. Tell us, how do we get in touch with you? How do we get your number? How do we get to you for a quote? Is the best way for me to go with that. Yeah,
there are a couple different ways. You can go to our website. There you can work on pulling a quote right from our website at bwifly.com. You can reach me directly if you have questions. My direct line is 949-272-0145. You can always email me. It's nicole.royer@bwifly.com.
Okay, so on your website, I can go on there and I can fill everything out and hit submit, and I can get a quote. I don't even necessarily have to talk to you, though I would want to talk to you, right? But I don't have to talk to you. I can just fill everything out online, send it to you, and end up getting a quote back same day or next day kind of a thing. Absolutely. Yep. You can go right to the website. On the homepage, there's going to be a little button to the right that says drones. Click that link and it'll start walking you through all the information we need. So I know people don't want to fill it out. I'm not going to call and bug you. I will call you, let you know I have the quote. I will reach out to you if I need additional information. If you don't want the coverage anymore, or you don't need to move forward, let me know and I will stop bugging you. But if I don't hear from you, I might bug you a little bit until I give up. So the biggest aspect of that I got to, the takeaway is, when you fill out the form online, is to try to fill out as much detailed information as you possibly can. You probably need serial numbers and all this kind of stuff. Get all of that information together. If it's ground equipment, listed as ground equipment, all of that to get the best quote that you possibly can. But fill it out as much as you possibly can. Hit submit, and Ms. Nicole will get back to you. And again, it's bwifly.com. Ms. Nicole, again, I really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time. We'll see you on the next episode.
You're welcome.